I love Counter-Strike, but there's one problem. I'm just not that great. There's nothing worse than queuing up game after game only to be consistently bot fragging. I couldn't help but feel I was letting my whole team down and wished I was better. After having an especially bad game where I nearly got kicked,
how are you this bad? We gotta give him the boot, man.
I decided I can't allow this to go on any longer and I need to get good. This is my journey to improvement and how I became the greatest solo queue player in CS2. Let's get started. Off the rip, I needed a plan. I needed some kind of direction. I began by creating what I call the CS2 nerd doc. This helped me to write things down and figure out where I struggled, what I wanted to improve. I started to create weekly or even daily goals, and I made sure just to put in some real, focused, directed effort. My overall goal was to not only improve, but to become that teammate that everyone wished they had, where I'd be able to fill any role and make sure that my team was successful. Things that I needed to work on immediately included mechanics, comms, knowing strategies, better utility usage, and so much more. And it was all part of a process. I didn't just do all this training at once and then go queue matches for 30 days, but I made sure to improve myself as a player little by little. And as a viewer, I know what all this sounds like. This is a lot of work. But most players mindlessly queue matches over and over without any real goal, and nothing's really changing. They're just rolling the dice and hoping that their team is better than the other team. For me, it was extremely important to actually write things down and internalize what I'm learning. Otherwise, I'm just wasting time and repeating the same process of pretending that I want to get better over and over. It's important to not get overwhelmed as well. CS is a pretty deep game, and there's going to be so many things that you're going to want to learn and implement. I personally practiced only a few things each week and made sure not to move on until I really had them down. I also found it useful to create a playlist on YouTube for when I was scrolling late at night and I'd see a CS video that sounded interesting, but didn't have the brain power to give it my full attention at 1 a.m. Losing is fine as long as you learn from your mistakes. Re-queuing without learning or trying anything new won't change anything, and you won't magically get better. I've heard a phrase before that says, "1 lesson learned is 100 losses prevented." At the beginning of my journey, every time I'd lose on a map, I'd reflect on what I could have done better. I'd go back and watch map guides for different angles, nade lineups, or other useful tips. And it wasn't enough to just watch the nade lineup videos and call it a day. I'd actually screenshot and copy them down into my doc, which would help me learn. I'd load up custom games and practice these lineups over and over until they were second nature to me. After all, what good is watching all these videos if I couldn't replicate them come game time? And anytime I lost a game and I felt like it was due to my shooting skills, I'd make sure to load up some bot training and play a minimum of 2 death matches as kind of a punishment and part of my training regimen. I was determined that I was not going to get out-aimed anymore. I was sick of being the reason why my team couldn't win. I found this particular aim training map to be useful for practicing counter-strafing, and then this map for practicing arm versus wrist movement. If you're not sure what arm versus wrist movement is, I'd recommend this video by Nothing where he explains it. And when playing these deathmatch games, I tried to focus on having good crosshair placement at head level and practicing my peaks. I wasn't focused on winning or getting the most kills, instead I was trying to work on my fundamentals and mechanics. And with all these routines, I eventually started tweaking them as I found better training maps online. At the beginning of this whole thing, I found it incredible how I could play really bad one game and then just a game or two later, I'd be top fragging. My goal wasn't necessarily to be at the top of the leaderboard, it was to raise my base skill level so that I was consistently playing well, and hopefully some positive stats would come as a result of that. But one thing was for sure, I was not consistent. I had a huge amount of variance between matches, which means, as you guessed it, even more training that needed to be done. With other games that I've tried getting good at, I found that if I'm ever having these big gaps between matches, it meant that I was fundamentally not understanding something about the game. Maybe there was a map where I didn't know how to play it properly, or a strategy that I wasn't sure how to counter. In general, you shouldn't be getting hard shut out one game and then dominating the next on a regular basis. There should be some level of consistency in your approach to the game so that you can make small adjustments over time as you learn what works against better players. Especially early on, I recommend playing the same position or site as much as you can. You need to get used to where enemies will be, where the common nades land, how long it takes to rotate, how to split the map, just a lot of things that are going to improve your game sense. And as someone who is solo queuing the vast majority of their games, Here's a few tips for interacting with teammates.
You a loser, bitch.
Suck my dick.
Every game is going to be a completely different experience. You're going to have some games with the chillest team ever where everyone's just getting along. You're going to have games with annoying people who are just messing around or are terrible. You're going to have games where your teammates are giving great comms and working together. And you're going to have games where everyone's just doing their own thing and nobody's talking. My number one rule was to not get mad and never engage with the annoying people. These people are stupid. They're just going to be hard stuck there for a long time, and I'm just passing by and visiting this level. I made sure to just play my game and focus on what I could do to improve. The wins don't really matter. It's about getting better and being the best solo queue teammate I could be. I wanted to be able to fit into any comp and be the perfect puzzle piece that would provide as much opportunity for success for the team. And I made sure to only worry about the things I could control. For example, if my teammates kept losing mid and never called this out and I was getting killed a couple of times, I made sure to never get mad, but instead mentally reset and recognize what's going wrong. I would start to think about how I was going to help them maintain control earlier in the round, rather than just sitting on my site, seeing that they lose mid, taking the other site, and then I have to keep playing a retake. It's a simple lesson, but it's so true. You can't just hope that things are going to be different round to round. You have to start adapting to how the enemy plays, especially if they keep doing the same thing against you and it keeps working. After about 1 week of my practice routine and my improvement strategy, I'd actually lost more games than before, which is kind of a funny statistic. But I just wanted to point out that just because you decide to take the game more serious doesn't mean that you'll immediately see results in your win-loss. I did, however, have way more game knowledge and felt much more comfortable in-game. My sensitivity was feeling great, I was calm during clutches.
Let's go, J-Rog!
I wasn't nervous to queue up for ranked games anymore. I just didn't care about the game-to-game result. I was more focused on the bigger picture. Still, I decided to tweak a few things I was working on, and I continued to iterate on my goals and my nerd doc. You would think that tryharding in a game would make it less fun. I mean, after all, I'm taking this whole thing really seriously, but it actually had the opposite effect for me. I was having a ton of fun trying all these new things out that I was learning and practicing in my actual games. Even if I lost, there were plenty of things to be happy about. I could be happy about how I smoked mid perfectly 7 times in a row this one game, or how I had great comms and our executes worked great on T side. I could be proud of how my peaks were getting so much better and I was playing situations different than I used to. I was starting to emulate what some of the pros did and all the VODs I'd been watching. I was also less nervous for matches because the wins and losses didn't determine whether that match was important to me or if I was having fun. Every match I was getting better, and that was the fun part. And because of all these things I was doing, my teammates were becoming a lot more positive and saying things like, "I've never had a team this coordinated before."
This is beautiful teamwork.
And that's the moment that really hit home for me that I'd been making some serious progress. I had finally become that type of player that my teammates are always hoping for.
Y'all played great.
And even though I tried to be a bit of a leader in most games, if someone else had a strategy, I supported them 100%. If they needed me to smoke or molly something, I knew all the spots. If they needed me to entry frag, I'm there. If people keep dropping the bomb and spawn, I pick it up. If no one on the team was an opper, I op now. I worked so hard to become as versatile as possible by improving at the game. My biggest tip for winning more games, if that's all you really care about, is to have a plan for when things go downhill. There are so many situations where things are going great and then your team loses 2 to 3 rounds in a row, or your teammate messes up something easy, or your team just lost that 3v1 and now everyone's getting mad at each other. You need to have a plan to keep up morale and give some direction, otherwise you're going to lose the vast majority of games once this starts to sink in. And I never barked orders or told people where to go and what to do. If things were down, I'd say something simple like, "Hey, let's go A, I can smoke jungle." And that would usually get people on board like 98% of the time. It really can be that easy sometimes. It's just important to keep up the communication and not let everyone go silent. And even after these 30 days, I'm going to continue playing the game. I think one of the true tests is when you don't feel like booting up the game or practicing that hobby, but you still persist on and you keep wanting to improve. If there's ever a day where you really don't feel like playing a match, but you still want to get better, go on YouTube or Twitch, study some new information, a new strategy, watch that pro POV, watch a stream, go into a custom game, practice some nade lineups, practice some movement, organize your own nerd doc. I have this same mentality when working on music or videos or just any other hobby in general. There's just gonna be days when you're not feeling it 100%, so do what you can to still be progressing towards achieving your goals. Make sure to maximize those days where you are really feeling it. You'll improve a lot faster if you can do even just 30 minutes a day versus one big 5-hour block once a week. I hope this video gave you guys some ideas on how to improve in Counter-Strike as well, and hopefully this was enjoyable to watch. Counter-Strike is hard. You're gonna have some awesome games and some pretty bad ones. And I think this goes without saying, but I didn't become the next Simple or Rops after this little 30-day experiment, but I did learn so much more about the game and definitely improve substantially. And the game is so much more fun for me now. Watching my games back while editing this was a real experience. I could see so many mistakes in some of my early games, and I know now how I'd replay some of those situations differently. Some final parting words: don't get frustrated. Keep working, keep improving, keep studying, keep loading up the game. Matchmaking is a wild place full of all kinds of people and nationalities, so try and be nice. Not everyone speaks English, but they want to play the game too. Thank you all so much for watching till the end of the video, and until next time, have a good one.
And who cares if we stand